Hey everybody, welcome back to Fallout Equestria. Alright, let's watch it.
Finally. At long last, I have reached this point in the story. And at this point, I beg your permission to take a little liberty with the telling of it.
Oh, fuck you.
It had been a long and winding road getting to Canterlot, and I still have to tell of the difficulties and discoveries that faced us there. The most vital of these discoveries were the 6 memory orbs.
Okay, I'm pausing this right now, but this motherfucker cut chapter 37 into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces. Each of them are damn near an hour. Some of them are over an hour. So, like, holy fuck.
The final memory orbs, which I found there. In those memories, the veils began to part, showing me my true place in this world, my purpose in life, and just how everything was going to end. I finally got my first glimpse of my own destiny. That it took so long was probably exasperating, and you might wonder why I didn't just skip to this part sooner. In truth, I have skipped over a fair bit, trying to tell you only the parts of my adventures that were important or exciting enough to keep you reading. I've told you these things, I suppose, for the same reason that Princess Luna told her story to Midnight Shower. Context. Only with the proper context can you see just how meaningful those memories were, and how they set my hooves on the path that ended with me coming here and doing what I'm about to do. For all that, there was a long and brutal journey still ahead of me. I had only seen glimpses. I had not found my virtue. I did not understand my role in this world, and I was utterly unaware of the war about to descend on all of us.
Oh no.
I didn't view them until our time in Canterlot was over, and I feel it would be too much to tell of them all at once. Too much for me, at least, to try to relive them all in order like that.
God damn it.
So with your indulgence, I will diverge from proper chronology and try to scatter these memories throughout the much larger story of our experience in Canterlot. Thank you for bearing with me on this.
I can hang
That's
up.
awfully fast.
I don't have to
Calamity
record.
commented, staring at the light pink mist that was already filling the streets of Canterlot as we looked down on it from high above. The steady rain had washed the pink cloud out of the air in days before, and yet the cloud was dense enough to tint the air merely half a day later. Most of the city was built from stone carved from the very mountain Canterlot embraced. Cobblestone streets had been lined with elegant structures formed from stone and mortar or magically molded rock. Most buildings of stone still stood, although cracked and crumbling from the weight of unnatural ages. As we flew by, a 3-story tower, once an upscale inn, collapsed with a deep throaty rumble, sending up curling swirls of pink-tinted stone dust. Everything more susceptible to the entropy of the cloud had been reduced to rust and rubble, smears and stains that once signified objects, and decrepit structures stained pink and falling apart at the seams. Oddly, some of the most preserved things were those which had once been alive. The black and twisted forms of dead trees lined streets filled with dark, pink-rotted bones, many of which had partially sunk into the discolored cobblestones. The only other place that looked eerily preserved was the cluster of buildings that had once formed the heart of Equestria, from a scattering of white stone towers to the royal castle itself. And the colored mist had settled everywhere, faint in the air below us, thicker on the streets and between the still-standing structures. "It will get much worse with each passing hour," Steelhooves warned us. "By morning, the pink cloud will have returned in its full strength." I pressed my lips together in determination before saying, "Won't be a problem. After Zebra Town, I'm not going to spend any longer here than absolutely necessary." One of the other things our experiences in Zebra Town had made very clear was that the threat posed by the pink cloud was directly proportional to its concentration. We had spent hours in the light haze of
You know, Lil Pip, how have you not just mutated into a fucking chaos spawn yet? Like, goddamn, the amount of radiation you've been exposed to. Magical radiation. What? I'm surprised you're not screaming praises to the dark gods.
cloud that persisted in the Zebra Town police station with only minor health problems. Nothing that couldn't be remedied by a health potion and some time in the fresh air. The places where the pink cloud pulled thickly, however, were lethal beyond even Steelhooves' description of it. "We're gonna land right in front of the Ministry of Image, dash in, and grab what we came for," I told my companions. "Then, we gallop to the Ministry of Awesome, get what we need from it, and go. With any luck, we'll be in and out in under an hour." We'd spent the earlier parts of the day helping Glyphmark. Even now, Zenith was still down there imparting all she could about zebra stealth techniques to the young adult zebras. At least, in such a short amount of time. Now the sun was setting, dipping below the clouds to paint the world in hues of fiery orange and bloody red. We hoped to take some advantage of the impending darkness.
Are you sure this place wasn't hit?
Velvet Remedy asked, observing the level of damage that was evident throughout the city.
Is this all from just age?
The entropic effect of the pink cloud speeds decay, Steelhooves noted. If the city were not made largely of stone, it would have crumbled to dust long ago. Only the mystically protected places are significantly intact. Well, I reckon a fair bit of damage was done by the explosion when the shield came down, too, Calamity commented as he circled into safe height, drawing us over the outlying city and towards the castle itself. I thought the missiles had stopped striking after the pink cloud went off. Yep, that's how I heard it, too. But that ain't the explosion I'm thinking of, Calamity explained. Remember, the megaspell pumped enough of that cloud into Canterlot to make the air look like solid pink.
Uh-huh.
And it weren't like the shields weren't full of air to begin with. Of course, the air pressure in Canterlot would have been...
Oh.
Well, I'm not sure how high, but it would have been pretty high. No wonder the pink cloud seeped into every surface it touched to the extreme with which it did. I expect the moment the shield went down, there was one hell of a... Well, you saw it, Steelhooves. Am I right?
And back.
I didn't notice, Steelhooves said with a morose defiance. I was a little too focused on the falling wave of pink water. I reviewed what we had learned from our so-called dry run for Canterlot in Zebratown, beyond the fact that Steelhooves and I disagreed on what dry means. The greatest danger we expected to face in Canterlot was the pink cloud itself, but the interior of the Zebratown police station wasn't much different than Canterlot right now, and so I was highly confident that we would be fine so long as we minimized our exposure. Likewise, while we knew that the pink cloud had the potential to fuse objects to flesh,
Yeah.
or each other, that only seemed to be a concern while within the highest concentrations,
Oh.
at which point such fusions were the very least of our health concerns. As such, I announced that I was going to continue wearing my armor and pickbuck. I'm going to put on my battle saddle the moment we touch down, Calamity responded. That is a foolish choice, Steelhooves retorted, pointing out. If you insist on taking the risk of wearing armor, your Enclave armor not only offers a much higher degree of protection, but its magical energy weapons are far more suitable for battling some of the dangers we are likely to face.
Yeah.
Our Canterlot ghoul's words reminded me of one of the more painful lessons from Zebratown. My combat skills were almost worthless here. The two enemies we were most likely to face were Canterlot zombies and alicorns. None of my weapons were worth a damn against the latter once they got their shields up, or against the former at all. In order to stop a Canterlot ghoul, I'd not only have to take them down, but then run up and hack off their head somehow.
Yeah, Lil Pip, you really should upgrade to laser weapons.
Unfortunately, bullets don't tend to decapitate. Yeah, I
That is bullshit. Aim for the head, Little Pip. It explodes.
know that, Calamity responded stubbornly. But while I know the chances are mighty slim, I still ain't taking the risk that I might fuse into the damn thing. He spat for emphasis. Our other environmental concern was the broadcasters. Steelhooves warned me that any broadcasting system, from pitbuck broadcasters to spritebots, were likely to have become twisted into lethal traps, even those inside. Fortunately, he also assured us that we should normally be able to hear the damn things before we got into their kill zones. Both of the broadcasters I had fallen victim to before had been underwater, preventing me from hearing them, and both times I had been traveling swiftly enough that I would have been thrust into their deadly area of effect before I could react. Hopefully, traveling cautiously would allow us to avoid such death traps while in Canterlot itself. Returning to his previous observation, Calamity mused. Still, that's a lot of pink cloud coming awful fast. You sure it's just seeping back up out of the streets and such? As opposed to what? Steelhooves queried. As opposed to, I don't know, being fed somehow? Calamity offered.
Yeah.
Steelhooves flicked his metal-shrouded tail. You think that the megaspell might still be going? I felt a chill at those words. I can't reckon how the pink cloud ain't been washed away if it ain't. That was a deeply unpleasant thought.
Yeah,
Velvet Remedy spoke
that's
up.
kind of horrifying.
But that would be insane. If the spell just kept going, it would eventually poison all of Equestria. The zebras couldn't have wanted that.
No, not even they would have. I recalled the rumor Steelhooves had mentioned. After the shield fell, the Zebras launched mega spells to finally obliterate the city. But if that is true, then those missiles never reached their destination.
It is possible, I offered, that they might have designed it to function indefinitely, just to ensure it would last as long as they needed it to, and because they expected it to be destroyed along with Canterlot shortly after the shield fell.
Only after it had done its job and murdered the princesses. Firelight let out a mournful note. We flew in silence for a few moments more.
Nah.
No, I said, telekinetically snatching the Fluttershy orb away from Velvet Remedy. She brought it out of one of her medical boxes. She gasped as the orb floated away from her.
Little Pip, give that back,
she demanded, her voice lowering. I frowned but shook my head.
You've been losing yourself in this too much, Velvet. It's really beginning to worry me.
I'd been letting this go for weeks. After all, her reliance on the Fluttershy orb had seemed to wane after Pilot had joined us. But ever since the Balefire Phoenix had been injured, and Velvet Remedy had neglected a dying pony to save her, my unicorn friend had been turning to the orb with even greater frequency than before.
Ah, you fucking addicts.
Excuse me?
Velvet huffed, telekinetically snatching it back.
I'm pretty sure I've spent nowhere near the amount of time lost in memory orbs that you have,
she pointed out.
And I've been a lot smarter about when and where to do so.
Ouch.
Okay, all true. But at least I'm not viewing the same one over and over and over,
I said, trying to sound perfectly reasonable.
That can't be healthy for you.
Probably isn't.
Velvet frowned.
It's because I like this one. No matter how bad it is out here, I can always find some solace in Fluttershy.
I cringed inside.
And yes, it is escapism. So is reading a book,
she challenged.
Would you be so concerned if I read the same book over and over and over? We all have our own little things that help us get through the day, and at least mine isn't self-destructive.
I could feel her on the verge of bringing up party time mint owls, but Velvet Remedy reined herself in, not wishing to cut that deep. Instead, she sighed.
This world is horrible, and I don't seem to be doing a whole lot to make it all better. All of my friends insist on risking death and dismemberment on a daily basis.
I don't, Steelhooves interjected.
Yes, well, you're being an entirely different problem, aren't you?
Velvet snapped.
My old home was assaulted, those I knew slaughtered, and now we're about to dive into poison at the behest of a psychotic despot who would see the extinction of pony kind. So maybe a little escapism is in order just to keep my sanity.
Escapism!
Steelhooves turned towards me but said nothing. I knew my own reasons for wanting to curb her Fluttershy worship, but this clearly wasn't the way.
What is that?
Velvet Remedy asked, changing the subject with the point of a hoof. I watched her tuck the orb away before turning to see what had caught her eye. The setting sun was passing behind a tall, slender white spire that rose up from the city, taller than the highest tower of the castle, flanked by a pair of marble wings easily 3 stories tall. The light of the sun seemed to ignite a nimbus around the spire as its shadow slashed across the city below.
Yeah. Sounds evil.
The Celestian Monument, Steelhooves informed us. Princess Luna had it constructed after Princess Celestia stepped down to honor her and her 1,000 years of peaceful rule.
Of course. That would be why it's taller than the castle.
Velvet Remedy nodded.
Luna was making it clear to every pony that she didn't see herself as a replacement for Celestia.
Beyond the Celestian Monument stretched a lifeless field lined with ugly dead trees that seemed to reach out of the dirt like grasping skeletal claws. The field was bordered by broken cobblestone walkways. In the center sank a huge rectangular pool of pink saturated water. Rising opposite the monument was the royal castle itself, a glorious mass of crumbling spires and cracked white stone. The field was flanked by the silent sentinels of 6 preserved buildings standing across from each other like pieces on a chessboard. The ministries, each now a shadow of their regal, impressive former selves. This was Ministry Walk. That there's a whole lot of alicorns, Calamity whistled, staring down at the dark forms which swarmed around the far end of Ministry Walk. We had been warned of alicorns in the Canterlot ruins, but I assumed they would be scattered about the city.
Nah,
Instead,
they're in
they
hordes.
amassed in Ministry Walk. It was almost as if something about the castle drew the alicorns close, like bugs around a lantern. So much for setting down a ministry walk. They would be all over us before the Sky Bandit touched ground, and alicorns were yet another enemy that my skill with firearms was pretty much useless against. At least as soon as they got their damn shields up.
Now, what?
Alicorns were some of the most powerful and dangerous opponents in the Equestrian Wasteland, but at least they'd been predictable. The encounter in Zebra Town had changed all of that. In the pink, the alicorns lost their telepathy and their connection with the goddess. Here, they were individuals, and their tactics and demeanor radically changed. Logically, I didn't have enough experience to be sure, but my instincts were telling me to expect these alicorns to be more clever than the ones I'd fought in Appaloosa and Manhattan.
Yeah, those guys were idiots.
Their individuality would allow for more creative tactical thinking. At the same time, they should be less coordinated. And if my suspicions bore out, less magically threatening. With the exception of what I had come to think of as their breed powers, all alicorns seemed to possess the same spells. But the only spell the alicorns had used in Zebra Town, aside from their shields, was a lightning bolt spell, and only one of them had used that. If all of them had possessed the full range of spells normal for alicorns, we would have been slaughtered. Instead, I had come to suspect that the alicorns were all tapping into a common pool of spell knowledge, one granted by the goddess, and when they lost their connection to her, they lost most of their spells as well.
Which, yeah,
Too
whatever.
bad the damn shield spell seemed inherent. Okay, new plan, I announced. We land in that cluster of buildings on the opposite side of the Celestian Monument, and we sneak our way in, moving quickly from building to building until we reach our targets. Steelhooves, which one of those buildings is the Ministry of Awesome?
The Ministry of Awesome is the smaller building made of glassy black stone. Farthest up, right next to the castle and
So, they're Cthulhu worshippers.
across from the Ministry of Morale.
Steelhooves answered, adding for clarification.
The Ministry of Morale is the one with the mooring tower for Pinkie Pie balloons.
Right next to the castle. Of course it was. I brought up my eyes forward Sparkle as Calamity winged us back around the monument and started to look for a good place to land. Directly behind the monument stretched an assemblage of moderately preserved structures adorned with golden rooftops. The buildings were littered over a generous expanse of space that I imagined must have been a park. A small river snaked through it, the water tainted by ribbons of pink, terminating an inner-city lake. "Here we go, Everpony," Calamity called as he picked a spot and began to shed altitude. I was thankful for Calamity's warning, even though there wasn't really anything to do but brace ourselves. Velvet Remedy took a deep breath, apparently intending to hold it while we dropped down through the pink cloud. We dropped into the pink. The tint of the sky transformed the sunset into something utterly alien, the red and orange hues shifting into sickly malignant colors.
Yeah.
Yay! Well, even with the change of plans, we should be in and out within a few hours. My eyes
You're
forward
gonna be
Sparkle
here
flashed
for
a
weeks,
location
aren't
name
you?
sent from my Pitbox auto-mapping spell. Print-
You're going to be here for weeks. Or at the very least, days, aren't you?
Princess Celestia's School for Gifted Unicorns. A cluster of lights flared up on my EFS compass, none of them immediately hostile. I turned my attention in their direction as Calamity flew us down between the rooftops of the tallest buildings. The lights came from within one of them. I urged Calamity to fly a little lower, just for safety. Ivory Tower, my EFS proclaimed as we neared the elegant structure with the golden onion. Graduate studies. One of the uppermost floors of the Ivory Tower had boasted a beautiful multi-story window. During the Megaspell attack, mounting air pressure had caused the window to implode, and the whole tower had filled with pink cloud. As we passed, I could see into what had once been a library. The books all long rotted away. The Ivory Tower had become a pooling place. I could see thick wisps of nearly solid pink floating up the stairs from the chamber below. Several darkened reptilian forms slouched about the library, occasionally flexing leathery wings. One of the creatures was curled up in a shattered bowl of what had once been a giant hourglass, snoozing soundly.
Yeah.
Dragons. Canterlot ghoul-eyed adolescent dragons.
Oh, fuck.
About Spike's age, I thought as I remembered being trapped in Spike's body, recalling the feeling of his wings. They could be his siblings, I realized, trapped forever in underdeveloped bodies that could not grow, and would not die. The sight struck a melancholy chord in my heart. a sad note that continued to play, even as 3 of their corresponding lights shifted to red. 3 of the Canterlot ghouls rounded, watching as we passed, then spread out their wings and launched themselves after us. Steelhills reacted immediately, dashing towards the back window of the Sky Bandit. "Steelhills, wait!" I called out, unsure if my actions were wise, but unwilling to make the mistake of shooting first yet again. "Velvet, you're up." Letting out a breath she had been holding, Velvet Remedy jumped to her hooves, flashing me an odd expression as she passed. It was either her way of silently saying, "About time," or she was still upset with me over trying to take the Fluttershy orb away. Velvet's horn glowed softly as Steelhoof stepped aside, making way for her.
"Dragons of Canterlot,
Her voice boomed, magnified majestically.
Oh, boy.
we are but little pony travelers, humbled to be in your magnificent presence. We beseech you to allow us passage throughout your territory. We promise our visit will be brief, and we will be of no bother at all."
Really?
Steelhill's voice rumbled, his tone making it very clear Velvet Remedy's diplomacy couldn't possibly work.
"No,"
She whispered back.
"not really.
She turned back to me.
Sorry about this, little Pip."
"Food!" One of the dragons bellowed. "Great. They ate ponies. Of course they ate ponies.
You
Mr.
keep trying this. You keep doing the wrong things on the wrong groups, little Pip. Like, reverse this with the Hellhounds, and then you be good.
Topaz had been planning a feast after all.
"Why, yes, of course.
Velvet Remedy replied.
I wouldn't think of passing through your home without bringing something to pay the toll."
With that, she floated out one of the dresses she had bought for me at Ten Pony Tower. The only one, I noted, which had several pretty sapphires woven into the hems.
"I'm afraid I only have one gift, so I do hope you don't mind sharing."
She tossed the garment out of the Sky Bandit's back window, and the 3 dragons immediately scrambled after the gemstone-studded dress. Turning back around, Velvet Remedy smiled and suggested,
"Let's go inside before they finish fighting each other."
I leapt from the Sky Bandit the moment it touched the ground, levitating our supplies with us.
I better not be getting sick.
We had left everything but the essentials back with Zenith and Glyphmark. Calamity released himself from the harness immediately. "Hey, look," Calamity said, pointing between the nearby buildings at the rubble of Clip-Clop's clipboards a few blocks away. "Maybe we should stop by there on our way back," he suggested as we all began to gallop towards the closest building. "Perfect time to get a blade of armor for the Sky Bandit."
Yeah.
No getting sidetracked. Wait,
"What?" I blinked at Calamity in confusion. "Yep. Ain't you noticed all the clipboards laying about everywhere?" Calamity asked, flying alongside us. "Darn things are nigh indestructible." I honestly hadn't noticed.
What?
But then, I didn't scavenge as relentlessly as Calamity did. Still, clipboards as armor? He had to be joking. "Made out of pure compressed obstinate tanium, they is,"
What?
Calamity continued. "Bet you not even little Mac can punch a hole in one." Obstinate tanium? There was no such thing as... Oh, I get it now. "Well, sure, the new ones were, but only after they stopped making them out of laid stubbornite."
God damn it.
Careful there.
Steelhooves grunted.
The Apple family had a monopoly on stubbornite mines.
Velvet Remedy chased behind us, a confused expression on her face.
I thought they were apple farmers."
She whispered to Firelight, who was flying alongside her. "Well, shucks," Calamity said. "If some ponies hadn't been hogging all the stubbornite for themselves, maybe they wouldn't have had to run out like they did."
I'll have you know that Applejack never once hogged stubbornite.
Damn.
Steelhooves countered.
She used every bit she had.
Oh, man.
I blinked,
You guys are
mouth
nerds.
hanging open. Did Steelhooves just make a joke about Applejack? Wow, that was new. A wave of pain blasted through my head as I reached the steps up the building door, my EFS flashing the name of the building amidst medical warnings. I felt like there was a vice tightening around my horn. My vision blurred and my ears began to ring. I stumbled back and the pain immediately faded. "Whoa," I called out, holding out a foreleg to stop the others behind me. I wasn't quite fast enough. Calamity didn't stop,
God.
flying right over me and slamming through the door.
Oh, you fool!
As soon as the door was open, I could hear the static. Calamity was halfway into the lobby beyond when he landed, staggering and spun about. I could see blood beginning to seep out of his ears and the corners of his eyes as he turned to look towards us, his face grimacing in pain. Then he looked up above and bit at the air. I could see his bloodied eyes widen as he realized he wasn't wearing his battle saddle. Wobbling, he shouted out, pointing above the door, "Lil Pip, right there." Then he toppled to his knees. I dashed inside, drawing little Macintosh from its holder, ignoring the explosions of pain in my head and the sudden tint of red in my eyes. I spun around, instantly spotting the school's public address speaker built into the wall just
that's
above the bust of
fucked.
the goddess Celestia that looked down at us from above the door. Blam! My first shot missed, digging a hole in the wall near the speaker. My vision was getting rapidly worse, and I couldn't use my targeting spell. It didn't recognize the speaker as a target. There's nothing for it to lock onto. Blam! Blam! My second shot shattered Celestia's face. The third hit the speaker, which finally exploded in a shower of sparks. The sound of static softened, but still remained. The pain didn't go away. There was at least one more speaker in here. I looked around, but my vision was swimming in red. I couldn't see anything. The ringing in my ears drowned out nearly everything else. I could barely hear the explosions all around me as I lost my equilibrium and fell onto my side, my vision fading to black. My vision cleared again, almost instantly, leaving my ears softly ringing and a comparatively minor headache beating my brain. The others had charged in after me, and from the smoke and debris, Steelhose had grenade machine-gunned the upper walls of the lobby until the static stopped. I groaned and sat up slowly, wiping blood from my eyes.
You guys
We have a new problem.
Velvet Remedy informed
Oh, I
me,
bet.
her voice seeming strange and far away. I blinked at her, trying to clear my vision, then looked towards the entrance where she was pointing. A shield spell had descended over the front door.
Oh, goody.
Apparently, shooting up the lobby in Celestia's private school of magic triggered defenses.
Oh, I thought it was alicorns.
We made it up to the third floor before finding out that the stairwell to the next level had caved in, forcing us to cut through the classrooms to reach the stairwell on the opposite side. My plan to avoid detours was off to a bad start. I pushed open a door, checking my EFS for hostiles, then made my way into the classroom. The building was old, but mercifully free of pink cloud, allowing us to proceed cautiously. We were operating under the assumption that the administrator's office was on the top floor, and would have a terminal capable of shutting off the shields locking us inside. At least, that is what we assumed the large space at the top of the tower was meant to be, based on a map which had decorated the lobby's back wall. A map which had lost large chunks under Steelhove's grenade barrage. Even in its state of decay, the room was elevated by touches of glass that set it apart from the buildings outside of Canterlot. Filigree in the walls and furniture, the tattered remains of rotting banners, the cracked marble tiles of two-tone blue checkerboard floor. I paused, staring at the globe tucked in the corner.
Well, I'm going to cut it off there. Oh, man, this thing's going to take me a fucking year to fit. It's going to take me a year to finish this chapter, isn't it? Oh, no, no. Oh.